Alright, so don't bite my head off if my explanation doesn't match pretty much exactly what Lloyd says, but it's just the best way that I understood it. So I'm just going to try to explain it the best way I can. And if I can't, well, then I'll just go on to the next one. But from what I know, the first thing that you want to look at obviously is the vocal fold edge. So you want to make sure that it makes like a little V like that. It doesn't, that it's smooth and straight, and it doesn't have any nodules on it or polyps like I'm going to show you right now. So, let me go ahead and look that up. Okay, so right there you can tell that there's already some sort of polyp forming. I can't really okay, so it's actually on the, let me go back to the picture. Okay, so you can tell that it's not straight. The vocal folds look kind of bumpy, rough around the edges, and you can already see that there's a polyp formation there, and it's hemorrhagic as well. It's pedunculated because it does tend to flip-flop back and forth, like I'll show you again. Alright, so you can automatically tell that the vocal fold edge is not straight. Or if you see any nodules again, that would pretty much, you would pretty much say that the vocal fold edge is not due to nodules. I mean, I guess it's not smooth and straight like it's supposed to be. Alright, so the next one is closure. So immediately, if you were to think of somebody that has presbylarynges, which I'll show you now, their vocal folds tend to have like a bow shape. Okay, so you can see that they're even having difficulty with closure because of the bowing. So let me go back to that, or to a different video. So you see that it's not going like this, but rather the vocal folds, or wherever you see my mouse going. Lovely ads. Okay. And they also have some sort of paralysis because you can see some sort of lateral compression. Let me go back again because I hate when that happens. Alright, so you see right there that it's not a V shape, but rather a bow shape. And again, you see the lateral compression. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that you want to make sure that if you're, for the color, to make sure that you're looking for not only on the vocal folds, but also other parts of the larynx, just to make sure that they don't have any varix or ectasia or erythema. So any redness, any discoloration that doesn't look more or less like this pink color right here, that would be irregular. So when you think of mobility, just think of somebody that has vocal fold paralysis, because obviously they're not going to have any type of movement in their vocal folds if they have a paralysis or bilateral vocal fold paralysis, like I'll show you now. So this is a paralysis, but it actually has glottic closure, good glottic closure. Let me go back to that. Okay, so you do see that this one does have a mucosal wave, but you can tell that the periodicity, or and I'll explain that later, it's a bit off. Alright, so back to mobility, I wanted to explain that here. You can see that like the vocal folds are a little bit sluggish. They're not really moving too much. In this case, you can't even see that they're moving at all. So in this case, this actually has lateral compression just because they're trying to use their false vocal folds And let me go back to the video again. Make sure I have the right one. It's not this one. Okay. So in this case, you could see the compression. And you see kind of like the vocal folds disappearing. So that's how you can tell whether they're using compression or not. A false vocal fold compression. So in regards to periodicity, the way that I see that, well, it says either you would rate it as consistent, inconsistent, or irregular. So I know it pretty much, the vibrations have to go on a certain cycle. So you would think about it as almost kind of like a song. Make sure that it goes to the beat. So you would expect the vocal folds to follow like a rhythm. So if you see them spazzing out, like in this situation, there is no periodicity because you see them going da 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 da, or you know, either way too fast or way too slow. It's not going in a rhythm. And a lot of the times you'd see that in, well, in this case, this is a type of paralysis, and also in like spasmodic dysphonia or like hyperadduction. So let me go ahead and show you what that would look like. Okay, so here's a good, let me go back. All right, so here you would see sluggish movement in regards to mobility. Okay, so in this case, when you're looking for a mucosal wave, you want to make sure that it's going, you know, like that with the other vocal folds, or the two of them should be doing that together. Obviously, in this case, the polyp is getting in the way, so they're not able to. So in that case, the mucosal wave is reduced. I'm going to show you a regular mucosal wave, so that way you know the difference. Okay, so obviously here you see that it's moving alongside each other like equally. They're symmetrical. And there's obviously a mucosal wave present, and the amplitude is perfectly fine. When you look at amplitude, you're pretty much, the way that I think of it is the extent of how they move, or the extent of the how much they move. So you would pretty much look at this right here, and obviously the amplitude is very strong, so it's perfectly fine. So when you're reading closure, another thing that you want to look for, I know I'm going back and forth, but I'm just trying to find good examples. You would see that this looks kind of like an hourglass, so obviously that's a deviant, or it's not normal in regards to how how the vocal folds should close. Again, let me go ahead and play the video back so that way you see how it looks like. That's obviously abnormal. It doesn't have complete closure of the vocal folds every time he tries to phonate. So when you see that little gap right there, that obviously means that there's abnormal closure. And it also depends what type of abnormal closure, incomplete closure you see. So like I explained before, it could be bowed, it could be an hourglass shape just like I showed you now, anterior gap, posterior gap, incomplete or irregular. Okay, so this is actually a really good video of how normal vocal folds should look like. There's a good mucosal wave, good amplitude. Let me go back. There is symmetry because this vocal fold mirrors this one, and it has complete closure when they're phonating. You can tell that also the vocal fold edge is smooth. You can see how it forms that V shape that I was mentioning. And there is no type of supraglottic compression because you don't see the ventricular folds trying to cover up the vocal folds. Usually that's a dead giveaway. You can still see them, they're still visible. So they're not trying to compensate because they don't really have any type of pathology. They have perfectly fine vocal cords. I'm not sure if I went over phase closure, but it says either it's you have to make sure that pretty much the vocal folds are equal when closing, so they're not open dominant or closed dominant. So in like an adductor dysphonia, you'd see them automatically shut and they'd constantly stay adducted. That would be something that would probably affect phase closure. And then in whisper dysphonia, which I'll try and look for something now so I can show you, the vocal folds usually tend to stay open. So that's what I would remember as phase closure. I'm not sure if there's anything. Oh, and also I'm not sure if I mentioned symmetry or not, but the way I see it is that if you see for example, and I wish I could put my phone down somewhere. If you see pretty much the vocal folds, one is slamming into, what the hell is this video? Let me go ahead and see if I can find a video of the, if you see one vocal fold slamming into the other vocal fold, like kind of like if it's bitch slapping it, like psh, 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 that would be an asymmetrical type of it wouldn't be symmetrical at all. It would be asymmetrical because it looks like it's chasing the other vocal fold. You're kind of like hitting it, which also causes nodules. So you'll see that a lot, like in that type of pathology. Let me go ahead and look for one so that way I can show you. All right, so in this case, you can also see the colors off, but you see that there is no, it's kind of asymmetrical. Let me go ahead and find something. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so in this case, you can tell that the periodicity is a bit off because it's not following that. Oh, let me go back. It's not following that rhythmic movement. The mucosal wave is decreased. The color looks fine, and there also seems to be like some sort of compression, and there is bowing. Okay, so this one is actually a perfect video because it does show like asymmetry. Looks like this one's kind of like bitch slapping that one over there, so obviously that's asymmetrical when you would read it in the parameters. So just remember that symmetry, make sure that it matches, that one mirrors the other vocal folds movement. So when you're looking at the compression, you want to make sure that it's not just side by side, but also top and down, or right here, right here. And you can see that the muscles are kind of like tensing up right here, even though you can still see it bilaterally. And that's a good example of what it would look like when it's squeezing. So you see that everything's kind of caving in. That would be what you would consider supraglottic compression. Sorry if I sound like so off. I'm trying to explain it the best that I can. Obviously it's like a last minute thing, so it's not very organized, but it's the best way that I can explain it.